Video 3, Unit 1, American History 1. Describe mercantilism, and if you want to go high level, be able to criticize mercantilism, but you're going to need to have some background in economics, understand free markets, socialism. If you don't have a background in economics just yet, then just be able to describe this economic system known as mercantilism, and then describe the events of the French and Indian War. Mercantilism basically is this old school, not existent anymore economic policy. And when we're talking about policy and economics right here, we're talking about trading with nations, resources being bought and sold between nations. The government is in complete control of what is sold to who. Now, this isn't quite communism, this isn't quite socialism, but it's definitely in that territory of the government's making a lot of decisions. The government isn't as extreme, it isn't as involved. It's not like in communism and socialism where the government's pretty much deciding what you're going to do, what you're going to buy, what you're going to sell, what the price is going to be. They are involved in every single decision. This isn't extreme central planning, which you run into in communism and socialism. But it is centrally planned in that if you are buying or if you're selling something, who you can sell to is controlled. The price of that good is controlled by the government and not by the market. In today's system, at least as close as we can get to that in today's system, the market, the people, the buyers and the sellers make decisions about what's going to be made, what's going to be sold, and at what price it will be distributed. Yet the government gets somewhat involved, but not as much as it did then. So mercantilism is kind of this old school idea that there's only so many resources on the earth, or there's almost so much gold. And if England accumulates more gold, then that means France will have less gold. And this is back in the days where they're always trying to conquer each other. And if you're not going to go kill your neighbor, if England's not going to go to war and kill France, the next best thing to do is to bankrupt France. And the best way to do that is to hoard all the gold, get all the resources. And the way that they can control all the resources and all the gold and all the silver is through mercantilism. So how does mercantilism work? Well, before we go over mercantilism, let's talk about a free market economy. No, that does not mean free stuff. It means the economy, the market, imagine a market, is free from government control. It is free from government involvement. This is the negative concept of liberty. Probably the easiest to understand and maybe the best possible explanation of what liberty is or what freedom is. It is the freedom from government control. It is free from government coercion. That is what liberty is. Liberty and freedom. You watching the screen, you're able to watch this. You're able to do a lot of things. Why are you allowed to do those? Because you have liberty, because you are free. And who are you free from? A government. The government doesn't tell you what to do all the time. The government can't tell you what to say, how to dress, what videos to watch. That is negative liberty. Probably should have a better definition, but it works. So a free market is a market where the government's not involved. The government doesn't tell you what to make. The government doesn't tell you what to do. The government doesn't tell you what to sell. The government does not tell you who to sell it to. The government doesn't tell you what price to sell it at. You are free to do whatever you want, free from government restrictions. So let's say you're selling tobacco because you've chosen that, because in a free market, you can decide what to do. Then you can decide how much to sell it. And you don't determine the price. The price is going to work more like an auction. England says we'll give you $5, $6 from France, $7 from Spain. And the price goes up as they get into a bidding war. See, the government is not determining the price in a free market. And the government is not telling you who to sell to in a free market. You'll sell to whoever you want, and that person's going to be the highest bidder. In this case, it'll be Spain. In the auction, the way that a market works, highest bidder gets the price. Boom. Pretty easy. You made a lot of money, and the reason you made that money is you did it free of government involvement. And also, Spain got the tobacco that they wanted at a price that they're willing to pay. Everything works out. Spain got the tobacco, you got their money. You don't need a government to get involved. That's a free market. The opposite of a free market is going to be communism, it's going to be socialism, and it's going to be mercantilism, where we have central planning, where we have a government making the decisions and telling us what we can and can't do in the market. Imagine walking through a Walmart and the government, Uncle Sam, is over your shoulder saying you can buy this, you can buy that, but this is going to be this price and this is going to be that price, and they're going to make all of the decisions. Basically, they're filling up your shopping cart. That is what you run into socialism, communism, and in mercantilism. So let's look at mercantilism. And again, we want a scenario of selling your tobacco. Not so fast, because the English owned the American colonies. Remember, they want to accumulate all the wealth. They want all the resources. That's how they're going to get rich. So their plan is, well, guess what? We own you. We're going with mercantilism. You can't sell to anybody else. Oh, by the way, we're also going to say that since you can only sell to us, we're only going to pay $5. And you can fight them and say, I'm not selling you $5 tobacco. At least give me 6. I could have made 10 in the other system. And guess what? They can say, fine, we'll just not buy it. Have fun. And they can do that. So you only have one person to sell to, so you take it, and there's nothing you can do about it. Obviously, this is going to create tension in the early colonies. The early Americans working on farms or producing whatever goods that they're making, maybe it's lumber in the Northeast, whatever goods that they are producing, they can only sell their goods to England. And they have to sell their goods at the price the English government decides, which is cutting the ability to earn money over here. It's cutting into their wealth. It's limiting their chance of being rich. So obviously, the colonists are not going to be very happy about that, and it's going to lead to problems down the road. Yeah, you get the gold, but they're really getting the best deal here. They're getting exactly what they want at the price that they want, so they can accumulate resources, so they can accumulate wealth, so that in the end they will conquer the world. That's mercantilism. It's kind of a silly plan. Obviously, the colonists don't like this. This is going to lead to eventually the American Revolution. And this is put in place by the Navigation Acts. The Navigation Acts is the official law that establishes the policy of mercantilism, which for the most part says the American colonies can only trade with England. This is great for England. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba. I'm loving it. I know that that's McDonald's. I know, but just deal with it. So again, free market capitalism. In a free market, not mercantilism. So you got mercantilism, socialism, communism over here. We got a free market, or what we sometimes call capitalism, which was actually a pejorative created to denigrate and to disparage. So capitalism was kind of this word that the progressives, the communists, socialists, progressives they create the idea of capitalism as an insult to make it look bad. And you often see that people talk about capitalism. Capitalism's terrible. Well, of course, when you call it that. But what if you call it a free market? A market free of government involvement. Yeah, that sounds a lot better because that's its actual name. Call up Adam Smith while you're at it. So anyway, so in a free market, if you're running a pizza place, you can sell pizzas to whomever you want. Him, her, he, who, ha, who, they, zer, whatever. Guess what? You made $40. That's awesome because you're not limited. The government doesn't limit who you can sell to. But in mercantilism, you are limited who you can sell to. Just like the tobacco farmer can only sell to England, the pizza guy can only sell to one person. So if we take out all these other buyers, guess what? Now the person selling tobacco or the guy selling pizza only makes $10 because you're limiting who you can sell goods to. So obviously the pizza guys are going to start an American Revolution. And then actually, remember in this case, he's England. He can say, well, I'm only going to give you $7. And there's nothing that the pizza place can do about it. Just let your pizzas go bad. So you might be thinking, well, this is good for consumers. Yeah, but that consumer in this example is just a representation of the English government. Yeah, it's good for the government, but it's not really good for the people. Well, technically, yeah, it would have been good for the English people, but the American people or the pizza boy twos, not good for them. Let's go to another example. So free market capitalism. Another reason why free markets are good, and if you want to call it capitalism, that's fine by me as well. So the free of government restriction. When you go to the mall food court, which maybe are there even going to be, well, were there malls left before all of this? Will there be malls after this? But it does seem that the mall food courts were still alive and well. So you go to the food court, you've got all these different choices, all these different tastes and flavors and flavor profiles. You can go to Pizza, you can go to Subway, you can go to Chocolat, you name it. And these companies are all competing against each other to get your service. And the way that they compete, the way they fight each other is no, they don't jump over the grill with a spatula and start beating the guy over at Subway. And the Subway person doesn't take the Subway knife and slit the throat of the Pizza Hut dudes. Sorry about the visuals. What they do is they just fight with prices, and that's how they convince you to go in. And this is good for you, the consumer. This is great. It's a free market. The government doesn't have to say lower prices, and the government doesn't have to say raise prices. The government doesn't have to do anything. Let the businesses and the consumers work it out. Maybe Pizza Hut doesn't want to drop their prices, but what they can do is just use the most fresh ingredients. Or maybe Subway's like, look, the best we can do $7, but man, you can customize. You can get anything you want here. This is where you want to go. So not only do we have lower prices, but we're getting better quality. We're getting customization. So faster service, you name it. So better prices, better quality, better service. This happens when businesses compete, and businesses are allowed to compete when you allow multiple businesses. That happens in a free market. When you don't have a free market, when you have a market that is not free of government involvement, the government controls which businesses operate. Just like we showed you in mercantilism, the government decided that you can only sell to England. The government decided that only we can trade between England and America. If we had more options, if tobacco could go to America, to Spain, to France, those countries are competing against each other, and it results in better profits for the company. So competition is absolutely good, and competition exists in free markets. Competition does not exist in centrally planned. When the government is planning in socialism, in communism, in mercantilism, where the government makes the decisions, the government does not have competition. The government has one store, and that one store provides goods to you, or just a couple stores. Over in a free market, the government's not involved, and let the strong survive. And if you don't know how to make a pizza, then guess what? You're going to go out of business. Learn how to make a better pizza, or learn to charge lower prices. Figure it out. Get strong or die. That's the way the free market works. And it results in better products for people. But if you go to mercantilism, where we do not have a free market, so guess what? It's just Pizza Hut. So we lose that option. And guess what Pizza Hut's going to do? They're going to jack the price up on you because you no longer have any options. Why don't I have any options? Because the government controls the economy. This is socialism. This is communism. This is exactly what has happened. This is exactly what will happen as the government gets involved. And you think, well, why don't we use mercantilism today? Well, why don't we use mercantilism today? Because it's a stupid policy that we and the world has realized that free markets have made life better. And I'm sure you're watching this video and saying, well, there's still poor people. Free markets free of government involvement, like I showed you earlier, lead to better prices and better quality. And that translates across the world, across borders. When companies compete, better quality, better prices. And that has lifted everyone out of poverty. You can read anything by Steven Pinker, and he has comprehensively gone through the data and shown exactly how, by taking away government involvement in the economy, everyone, not just America, not just Europe, we're talking about everyone's life has become noticeably, markedly better because of a free market. That is why we do not have mercantilism. That is why, for the most part, people have realized that socialism doesn't work. And yet, though, the idea is creeping back into people's minds. But if you just take your time to look at the data and look at the information, you will quickly realize that, yeah, maybe the best way to lift people out of poverty is to get the government out of the economy, not get the government into the economy. Here's a perfect example. The government gets involved, they make a decision, and guess what? Hey, it's great for Pizza Hut in this example, which is England, but you, the consumer, it's not good for you. So we will talk about the French and Indian War in the next video, but I just want to wrap up one little quick segment to remind you of how this works. So, because I gave you kind of some comparisons today, because I want you to be able to take it to the next level, not just know, all right, mercantilism was established by the navigation. Well, let's do it. Let's get the basic facts. The Navigation Acts established the policy of mercantilism. What is mercantilism? It is a very restrictive government economic policy. In this specific form of mercantilism that we care about in American history is the policy that said the American colonies can only trade with England, who owned the American colonies. By doing so, this was great for England because they thought mercantilism, the idea is accumulate wealth and resources and take over the world. This is bad for the Americans because it eliminates these possible consumers. It limits their options of people to sell to. And so it takes away the bidding war that would jack up the price, which would help American farmers, which would help American shipbuilders, American lumbermen, lumberjacks, you name it. Americans were limited in the amount of money they could make because the government got involved and restricted their options. Same thing would happen today with socialism and communism if the government restricted that. It restricts growth. In a free market, where it's free of government involvement, you can really grow. But in mercantilism, it limits growth. Now, it was great for England, bad for the colonists. This will be one of those steps towards the American Revolution.